The thing about injuries to starters is sometimes there can be a ripple effect. And in this case, with Zach Edey missing an extended period of time, there's a lot we got to talk about in terms of how this impacts others around the Memphis Grizzlies, including Morant. Let's talk about it coming up here on Locked On Grizzlies.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies. I'm your host today, Damichael Cole, beat writer for the Commercial Appeal, right here in Memphis, Tennessee, going solo without my co-host, Joe Mullinax, who's getting a couple days off. Joe Mullinax will be off today, and he'll be off tomorrow, so you're going to be stuck with me the next couple days, so hopefully we can put out some good content, but I think we got a lot of great things to talk about on today's show. But before we get to that, this episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. I want to appreciate you guys, and thank you for making Locked On Grizzlies your first listen each and every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. And you know, we're your team every single day. Shout out to the everydayers out there. I love when I run into the everydayers in Publix, whether it's at a Grizzlies game, whether it's, you know, anywhere else. I've run into people in some of the most random spots, I'll say. And people always say, hey, DeMichael, I'm an everydayer, and we appreciate it. Joe appreciates it. And make sure you continue to like, comment, rate, review, and subscribe. All things Locked On Grizzlies. But now we got to get into the show because we got a lot to talk about as we continue to talk about the impact of this news on Zach Edey. If you missed yesterday's show, if you've been living in the cave, Zach Edey sprained his ankle. He will be getting surgery. This surgery is more of a cleanup procedure to just basically say, hey, look, let's make the ankle injuries a thing of the past. He's had three left ankle sprains at this point since he's been in the NBA. 4 total, I believe, is the exact number. But he's done things like, you know, he's worn after that ankle injury I think he had in November. You know, he wore an ankle brace the rest of the season and things like that. And it still got hurt again. So, you know, we'll talk more in the next show when we'll get into it. I got some stuff up my sleeve. We'll talk more in the next show about, you know, the just the ins and outs of the injury and kind of where to go on the Zach Edey standpoint. But as I said in the opening, there's a ripple effect here. There is more than Zach Edey who is impacted by this. As quite frankly, it's the Grizzlies franchise. And in this first segment, we're going to talk about just the people who are, quite frankly, impacted the most by this news. And I want to start with the head coach. I want to start with Tomas Isalo as the person who I think is the most impacted by Zach Edey missing the beginning of the season. Let's explain why. What you know about Tomas Isalo is, you know, there are a lot of things that we're learning about him on the fly, but what we do know about him is the pick and roll, the screen setting are all major emphasis to what he wants to do. Everything, I mean, he was kind of regarded when he came to the Grizzlies in a way as like a pick and roll expert. Like that was his bread and butter, so to speak. And of course, we didn't see much of it during the season. And then Isalo takes over as the interim coach. Lo and behold, we start to see a drastic increase frequency of pick and rolls, and Zach Edey and his success in those situations, him being a terrific screen setter, really started to unlock some things for the Grizzlies, especially on the offensive end. So now, when you talk about the head coach, the best head coaches in the NBA are adaptable. You know, sometimes you try to give them everything they want. Like, hey, you said you want a bunch of really good shooters. You want a bunch of guys who can play, you know, defense, who can be switchable versus defenders. You want a bunch of guys who can protect the rim. You want a good point of attacker defender. We're going to try to get you all these things. But 9 times out of 10, we might be able to get you this, but we can't get you that. Wherever the case may be, the job of a head coach is basically to, you know, cover up some of those shortcomings. Every team in some way, shape, or form has some shortcomings. Every single team in the league. You know, you point out any team, I could tell you, hey, That's something. There is something that they're not good at. Now, with that being said, uh, with Zach Edey out of the picture, you look at the Grizzlies roster right now, and there aren't really any great screen setters. Brandon Clark, he can set you a nice screen, roll to the rim, catch an alley oop, whatever the case may be. Santi or Jaren aren't really forceful screen setters, to say the least. They would have to drastically improve in that area. So the point is now, with Isolo knowing, hey, I'm not going to have my A chip, right? Like, we might have to do some things a little bit differently, or we might have to bring in someone, which we'll talk about in the next segment, who can add to those areas that we like to do. I think this is going to be a big period of time for Tomas Isolo, right? You can't be a one-trick pony as a head coach. Can't be, because as the NBA goes on, you're going to see a bunch of coaches who thrive, a bunch of teams who thrive at taking away whatever your strength is. For years, we've seen, like under Taylor Jenkins' last 3-4 years, for years we have seen teams say, hey, the Grizzlies are dynamic in transition. Let's slow them down. We've seen teams say, hey, the Grizzlies want to get to the paint. Let's pack the paint. Let's make them shoot 3-pointers, especially in the playoffs. And that's typically when those weaknesses tend to show up more times than not. So with that being said, what is Isolo going to do? I'm really looking forward to seeing, like, hey, look, we might not have the one of the league's best screen setters available at the beginning of the season, but here's how we're going to combat that. Here's how we're going to optimize Jaren Jackson Jr., Santi Aldama, Brandon Clark, and whatever potential big fills that other fourth big spot. That is going to be a very telling sign to me, and it should be to you as well, on what type of coach you have in Tomas Isolo. Sure, there are high hopes for him, but everything should not revolve around, hey, let's get Zach Edey, as Zach Edey likes to say, headhunting a bunch of guys on the perimeter, setting a bunch of screens, clearing up things for all these different guys, and optimizing the offense that way. Clearing up things for all these guys, especially Ja Morant. And that's the second person that I want to talk about, who I think is impacted by this Zach Edey injury. Tomas Isolo as the head coach, Ja Morant really had a strong stretch of play under Tomas Isolo towards the end of the season. If you just go through Ja's stats over the course of the season, it pretty much looks like this. You go to the first month, he was averaging around 20 points a game. Then he was at 22 points. Then he was at 21. Then January, there was kind of a dip. He averaged 18 points in January. He averaged 22.6 points in February. So right now you're seeing 22.6 was his highest at that point. 22.4, he had the 20 month, he had the 21 month. Like, he was just early 20s for the most part. And then if you go to the last 2 months of the season, you're talking about 8 games in March, and you're talking about 5 games in April. Ja Morant averaged 29.5 points in March. March, by the way, is when Tomas Isolo took over. And he averaged 30.2 points per game in the month of April before the playoffs. And if you go to the playoffs, especially in that game 3 against Oklahoma City Thunder, he really looked like he was about to have one of those spectacular Ja Morant performances. But Ja Morant, look, it's no secret. I've touched on this a lot, and you can look up the numbers yourself. Like, it's weird to me, because if you look at Ja Morant in the closing minutes, he's been one of the clutchest players in the NBA, right? We talk about that final shot, game on the line, call 12. He comes through. And I still would put the ball in his hands regardless of what I'm about to say next, because what I'm about to say next goes against that logic. And that is that Ja Morant is not a league average isolation scorer. The numbers have shown us this over the course of his career. Pretty much every single season, he is graded out as below league average in isolation scoring metrics. And this is by the NBA.com stats data. So, do with that what you will. But it's basically just saying, hey, look, when Ja's at the top of the key or wherever he is, and he's going in isolation mode against a guy, he's usually not generating efficiency. Now, at the end of the game, that ain't the case. We've seen it with our own 2 eyes or 1 eye or however you see it. You've seen it. Ja Morant gets busy when a game is on the line. So with that being said, it's kind of a, it's a tricky thing. But I really want to see, and we'll ask, when we get a chance to talk to Tomas Isolo, how do you optimize Ja Morant? That's going to be important to find out. And look, Ja downplays it a lot, but the numbers are the numbers. Like, this season was weird for Ja Morant most of the year. And it was weird to me in part. I mean, just watching, and I'm sure many of you can agree with this and test to this. It was weird in part because they had this offense that just wasn't setting screens. And everyone was, about basically out in space. There was a lot of cutting, there was a lot of drive, kicks, things like that. And it didn't really seem to be the best fit for Ja Morant. And when the Grizzlies kind of abandoned that style of play, and they went to, more high pick and rolls and things like that, Ja Morant was the player. You can make an argument for Zach Edey, who we're talking about here, but Ja Morant benefited as much as anyone on the team. So that's something that I really want to pay attention to as we talk about who's going to be the guy who really benefits from, this situation that the Grizzlies have. Now, speaking of benefiting from situations, who's going to benefit in terms of getting the chance to play with the Grizzlies? Let's talk about that coming up here on Locked On Grizzlies. But before we get to that, today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by DoorDash. Look, NBA fans, you know what time it is. Playoff season means big performances and even bigger rewards. DoorDash is bringing the heat with a slam dunk deal for DashPass members during the 2025 NBA playoffs. It's called Day Swoosh, You Score. Anytime a player drops 50 or more points in a playoff game, DashPass members score a free 3-piece crispy chicken tenders combo from Wingstop the very next day. Just place an order of $20 or more. Use the code WINGSTOP50 at checkout, and that combo is yours. Crispy, delicious, and free. Offer valid noon to midnight the day after the game. Terms apply. And look, you ever looked at your delivery fees and thought, like, yeah, it's got to be another way? With DashPass, you get $0 delivery fees and exclusive perks like this one. How much would you save over the course of a season? So here's the play. Sign up for DoorDash right now to unlock this and more exclusive deals all season long. When any player scores 50 plus points in a playoff game, DashPass members can grab a free 3-piece crispy chicken tenders combo from Wingstop. Oh, that sounds so good. With a $20 plus order and the code WINGSTOP50. That's DashPass. Your order to your door to saving more money, more flavor, and more ways to win. Terms apply. Make sure you go check out that opportunity at DoorDash right now. Welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies, where we're talking about the Zach Edey injury impact. I mean, it was a big shock to the system, or whatever the case, how you want to describe it. But at the end of the day, it happened. It's here, and the Grizzlies got a season coming up, and they got to adjust accordingly. And the easiest route, well, I wouldn't say this is the easiest route, but the most obvious route to address this issue is through free agency. Some will say it's through the NBA draft, but I tell you now, the Grizzlies don't have a first-round draft pick. They have 2 picks, which will be late in the second round, so you can try, but then we just say this team isn't trying to get younger. So why would you depend on a late second-round pick to be the guy to step in for Zach Edey? No, I'm not even really entertaining that option much. But that's neither here nor there. Let's talk about the urgency that needs to be placed during free agency. At the end of the day, it's this simple. And I'm just going to get straight to the point. There are not a lot of good options in free agency. Don't even waste your time. So, this is my dream guy. I mean, maybe one of these guys I say will, kind of pique your interest, but I'm not looking at anyone in free agency based off of what I've seen and saying, oh, that's the guy who's going to be a great fill-in for Zach Edey over that 15, 20, how many ever games it is that he's out. But what many people could agree on is the fact that another big is imperative. Quite frankly, I would have said this even before the Zach Edey injury. And when I say imperative, it's not someone that's going to replace Jaren, not someone to replace Santi, not someone to replace Brandon Clark, not someone to replace Zach Edey. I think it's a situation where we're saying who is going to be that guy But Zach Edey's in foul trouble, and you're going against Evan Mobley and Jared Allen. Because what I saw is Brandon Clark, 6'7" big, not really a great fit against those guys. Can you give me another guy who's 6'10", 6'11", physical? That would be probably a better matchup when you're talking about that type of game. And there are some other matchups that are similar to the one where, like, Cleveland was just an obvious example where Brandon Clark wasn't, the type of big that really would strive in that environment. So with that being said, when you scan the center market through free agency, you look at, and there's like a top group of guys who are going to be pretty much out of the Grizzlies price range based on what the Grizzlies need. Now, if the Grizzlies wanted to and they said, hey, we just need these guys, they probably could make it work. But I've said time and time again, when you talk about when guys are healthy, Zach Edey, Jaren Jackson Jr., Santi Aldama, Brandon Clark, you give me those four bigs, I'm not going to complain too much. You got one of the best rebounders in the league. You got Jaren Jackson Jr., very skilled, two-way big. You got Santi, who averaged over 12 points per game off the bench. Really good three-point shooter. Off the bench, I'll take that. You got Brandon Clark, very versatile defender, knows his role really well. He's not going to do too much. He's going to get to his spot. He's going to shoot that floater. He's going to rim run, get you some open shots. He knows his role. Like, you got a solid quartet there that really understands basketball. So it's like, other than that, not really looking for too much. But when you talk about the top group, you got Miles Turner, who reports have been indicating that, like, Indiana wants to bring him back. And why not? I mean, Indiana is in a position where they're going to go into the luxury tax potentially, and he's probably going to be a reason why. And they need to bring him back. Brook Lopez, he's been a rumor mill name as of late. We'll see what his market looks like, but I feel like that's one that's probably going to play, probably be a little bit out of the Grizzlies price range. We'll see. I could be wrong. I've been wrong before. The other two guys are Naz Reid, who I think will definitely be out of the Grizzlies price range, and Clint Capella, who in Atlanta, hasn't really done himself any favors over the last season plus with his kind of declining play, I think is the way to put it. So he could be affordable. That isn't, I'll say, put him on the watch list just a little bit. But that's one I want to see what the market looks like for him before I aggressively pursue him. Here are some names to me that makes sense when you talk about affordable. And when I say affordable, look, I'm just gonna lay it out there. I don't think the Grizzlies should use most of their mid-level exception to go get another big. Let me know what you guys think too. The comment section on YouTube is open. If you're one of those people say, Damichael, I disagree with you. I think we should prioritize getting a big, with the majority of our mid-level exception, which is expected to be roughly around $9 million. But I don't think that's the case. I think you should go get a wing to add, to someone who could potentially close games alongside of Desmond Bane and John Morant. And, I think that is the priority. Of course, you'll have Jalen Wells, and we'll see what his second-year jump looks like. You'll have Vince Williams. You'll have John Conchar potentially. You'll have other options. But with that being said, I'm looking at this situation as the wing is the primary position where I'm looking at where I want to spend that MLE money. The wing makes the most sense to me. Makes the most sense. It is the most logical position, whereas a big, you pretty much got four bigs who are going to get all of those minutes, more than likely. So you're talking about adding a fifth guy who probably going to play a lot at the beginning of the season, but when Zach Edey gets back, he's probably going to have a towel on his shoulder. So that's that. But three names that stand out to me. I'll throw these three names out real quick, and we'll talk through it. Steven Adams. Yeah, I know. I can't help myself. I cannot help myself. I love reunions, family reunions, high school reunions, middle school reunions. Love reunions. It's a cool thing. Why not? Zach Edey, is looked up to Steven Adams. Kind of come back in a mentor role in a way. We know what he can do on the offensive glass. On the defensive glass, as a screen setter. You say, hey, look, we know about the injury history with the knee. We just need you to start the first 15 games or so, and we will manage the minutes the rest of the season. Now, that'll cost you a little bit. Like, we'll get into the numbers on a future episode. But at the end of the day, I think you could potentially at least look into the option of doing that without using your MLE. A couple other names: Kevon Looney, Andre Drummond. What those two guys have in mind is they have the potential to be very good screen setters. They have the potential to be very good rebounders. That's all you need. You're not trying to get someone who's going to do a fadeaway, a post shot with 2 seconds on the shot clock, because they're not doing that. But you definitely don't need that. It's not what you need. You need someone who's going to be say, hey, I'm ready to do the dirty work. I can play in this role and be effective. That's all that this team needs. And if they're going to get that from a guy like Andre Drummond, who's been one of the best rebounders in the NBA in recent years, if they're going to get that from a guy like Kevon Looney, who, at times has been a really good rebounder. And at times, I mean, we've seen it up close. He had a game against the Grizzlies where game 6, 2023. Go look that up. You might not want to look it up, but 2022, excuse me. But Kevon Looney, Warriors closeout game against the Grizzlies, owned that game. Owned it. So that is one that really stands out to me, those couple guys. Let me know what you guys think as well. Are there any other bigs out there that make sense to you? I know Mo Wagner's out there as well. There are a couple other names that people may like. Let me know what you guys think. With these names, I'm trying to look at it from the perspective of I'm not going to use most of my mid-level exception or my assets to go get a guy who's probably going to be the 5th big, with the idea that you're going to bring Santi back to go with Brandon Clark, Jaren Jackson Jr., and a healthy Zach Edey. I'm not trying to use most of my assets for that when you need another wing, when you need another guy who could potentially be in those closing lineups with John Morant, with Desmond Bane, and just could be an impact player for you to go with Scottie Pippen Jr., to go with Jalen Wells, to go with other guys that you trust on the perimeter. That's where my mind is. Speaking of where someone's mind is, where's Zach Edey's mind now? You got this big injury. You're going to be out for a while. I'm curious about the second-year jump. Let's talk about that coming up here on Locked on Grizzlies. Before we get to that, today's episode of Locked on Grizzlies is brought to you by Monarch Money. Look, you ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. And that's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you just stop managing. So all you got to do is just stop managing your money and start building wealth. Use Monarch Money to help you take care of that. And it's very convenient. Instead of juggling multiple apps, just use Monarch Money to check your finances. You can track your spending and even plan long-term goals. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. The code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. Make sure you go take advantage of the opportunity now at monarchmoney.com. Will Zach Edey take that second-year jump? That is the question now. I was excited about Zach Edey this offseason, excited as I was for any other Grizzlies player, including Jalen Wells, including any other player that you expected to make a tremendous jump this offseason. Because, one, when Zach Edey says, I'm going to work harder than anyone, I believe it. Like, of course, a lot of players say that, I'm going to work as hard as anybody. First one in the gym, last one out. My eyes have shown me the work ethic of Zach Edey. Quite frankly, you don't even need your eyes to see it. You just need to know the history. I mean, this guy pretty much he caught on to basketball late. Started playing as a teenager. And boom, goes to Purdue as like this project. Ends up being a 2-time National Player of the Year. That's work. He went to Purdue as a project. Didn't even play much as a freshman. Sophomore year plays, a lot. And earns his way. And then boom, Player of the Year as a junior. What you going to do for encore? Player of the Year again. Zach Edey was a quick learner this rookie year. This is just my thoughts. Again, we talked about it. I remember that first time they played the Lakers towards the end of the game. LeBron James, Anthony Davis picked Zach Edey apart. They just constantly ran pick and rolls right at him, setting back picks on him, putting him in these weird positions. And Zach Edey was honest after the game. I hadn't seen some of that stuff before. I'm paraphrasing, but that's kind of what he said. And he said, you know what? I'll be prepared next time it happens. You know what happened next time? Zach Edey was one of the most efficient Grizzlies players on the floor. They still tried to attack him. I mean, it's LeBron James and Anthony Davis. Like, they're going to do what they got to do. But now, how much can Zach Edey realistically improve when we talk about taking that second year jump? Here's why I asked that question with him. Because mentally, he's going to do it. He'll do it. Mentally, he has a better understanding of what I need to do to carve out space, what I need to do to get open, how quick I need to move into it. Like, mentally, he'll have it taken care of. I'm not worried about that with him. Physically, it's a different conversation because I don't know what to expect. And we'll talk more about this as we learn more about the surgery and things like that. But if you go back and listen to Zach Edey's comments and his final media availability in the exit interviews, what did he talk about? A lot of it was physical with him. And a lot of guys focus on the mental aspects of the game. So that's why I'm pointing this out. But he said he wants to move better laterally, right? He wants to have better agility in those situations. An ankle surgery doesn't really help that. At least not right now. So I'm curious to see how much can he improve. Because the physicality is something that he wants to get better at as well. Like Zach Edey has talked about how he wants to be able to move other bigs, right? He's going to get stronger. He wants to get bigger, all these different things. How can he put himself in a position to take those jumps? I mean, we've seen it with Jonas Valanciunas from earlier years in his career. Ivica Zubac is another example. As he got stronger and was able to move more guys, Jokic is another good example of that as well. Zach Edey will continue to get stronger and continue to understand how to use his strength. But at the same time, how is this injury going to affect that? It's a fair question. And I am questioning how much of a second-year jump physically we'll see from Zach Edey because there's no summer league for him now, right? The mental steps will be there. I think he has a good idea of the speed of the game. He has a good idea of, the playmaking aspect of it, the screen setting aspect of it, how fast things move from the offensive end to the defensive end, understanding the fouls, that are being called. How physical can I be with one foul in the first quarter, 2 fouls in the second quarter, 3 fouls in the third quarter, 4 fouls in the fourth quarter, all these different things. Zach Edey, I think from a mental standpoint, will have a better understanding of. So he's going to take a jump, in my opinion. How much of a jump will that be? I'm not confident yet in saying he'll take that traditional first to second year jump. Whereas I feel like Jalen Wells, we can say that. But with this injury, there's a lot more to learn and to know before we say, oh, yeah, he'll confidently take that second year jump. Thank you for making Locked On Grizzlies your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NBA Big Board Show. NBA draft expert Rafael Barlow reacts to every workout, interview, and rumor leading up to the NBA draft. Find Locked On NBA Big Board on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. I want to thank you guys for tuning in to Locked On Grizzlies with me on today. Make sure you tune in for tomorrow's episode of Locked On Grizzlies as well. We'll continue to talk a little bit more about the Zach Edey injury. Got some more information for you guys as well. But we'll talk about some other things as well. I know you guys decided to just Zach Edey. We got more to talk about as we continue to get through the dog days of the summer. So make sure that you stick with us for that. But remember that Locked On Grizzlies is free and available wherever you get your podcast. I'm Damichael Cole, and we'll see you on Locked On Grizzlies.